It's not the yelling that breaks someone on the inside. It's the silence of the one who vanished without warning. The absence of someone who was always there and now isn't. What truly destroys a person isn't the end of a conversation. It's the fact that the conversation never even happened. And when someone realizes you're no longer reacting, no longer begging, no longer explaining, they finally understand they lost you. And the worst part? They lost you without even getting the chance to say goodbye. That's the impact you're about to understand. The impact of someone who disappeared in peace. If you're tired of giving your all and receiving crumbs, if you feel like no one notices how long you've held yourself together in silence, this video is going to hit you deep. Here, you'll learn how to use your absence as a tool of emotional strength. You'll discover, grounded in Stoic philosophy, how to maintain emotional control even when everything inside you wants to scream. And the best part? You'll understand why staying silent can be your most powerful response and your greatest protection. If any of this is already resonating with you, subscribe to this channel now. Here you won't find shallow advice. You'll find practical wisdom, real strategies and content that helps you stay calm under pressure, build self-discipline, master your mind, and stop letting your energy be drained by people who don't deserve it. Hit the like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and turn on notifications, because what you'll find here can change your life, and you don't want to miss a thing. You know what truly breaks someone on the inside? It's not the shouting, it's not the heated arguments, it's the sudden silence. It's that absence that comes without warning, without a final speech, without a chance to respond. That unexpected lack that disarms even the most controlling people. The one who always expected your reaction now faces emptiness, and that emptiness is an emotional earthquake. Unexpected absence becomes a silent way of showing that you no longer belong to the other person's emotional game. And this is where something few people know how to master begins: the power of strategic absence. Leaving without warning hits the ego of someone who thought they knew you. They expected you to explode, but instead you vanished. They counted on your drama, but you gave them silence. There's no script for that. What destabilizes a manipulative mind the most is realizing they've lost access to your emotional buttons. And that kind of loss, my friend, isn't visible, but it destroys from within. Marcus Aurelius would say that strength lies in not reacting. When you stop being predictable, you break their script. You plant doubt. Did she finally give up? Did he free himself? That doubt eats away more than any word could. And the most fascinating part? It happens without you saying a single thing. That's stoicism in practice, mind mastery over emotional outbursts. That's real power. Want a practical example? Think of someone who always kept you as a second option. When you stop trying to please them, when you disappear without a scene, that person starts looking for you. Why? Because absence speaks. Because the silence that once seemed like weakness now reveals mental strength. But beware, this only works when it comes from a conscious choice, not from wounded pride. It's a move born of wisdom, not revenge. And that kind of move requires something few people can maintain: silence, a firm silence, with no hints, no explanations, no exit speech. A silence rooted in inner peace, in self-discipline, in personal growth. This is where the real transformation begins, not reacting to be heard, but stepping away to be respected. And if the other person doesn't understand that, it's because they're still trapped in their own noise. But here comes the most challenging and most liberating part: realizing that silence isn't emptiness. It's a presence, stronger than ever. That's when the game changes. That's when silence becomes an unshakable emotional strategy. And next, you'll see how this can completely destabilize everything the other person thought they had under control. Silence isn't running away. It's choosing not to waste yourself anymore, where you've already lost too much. True silence isn't empty. It's emotional density, it's clarity. When you decide not to respond anymore, not to justify your decisions, not to participate in emotional theater, you take a position of power that confuses those who relied on your reactions. This silence doesn't come from weakness, but from maturity. It requires mental strength and mind mastery, which is why so few can actually sustain it. Have you noticed how some people need your words to keep manipulating you? They crave the outburst, the argument, the last message, because as long as you speak, they have control. But when you go quiet, the game changes. Doubt starts to eat them alive. The lack of explanation becomes an emotional minefield. In this context, silence is a higher form of emotional control, not out of vengeance, but liberation. And for those who study Stoic philosophy, this is the peak of ancient wisdom in motion. Imagine you were always the one who explained yourself, the one who sent long texts, always trying to resolve everything through conversation. Now, you go quiet. You don't respond, don't chase, don't plead, you just observe. It's like taking the other person's stage away. Without an audience, there's no show. And what seems like coldness is actually peace. A practical example. Instead of spending your energy in arguments, spend that time reading. Try Letters from a Stoic or Discourses by Epictetus and watch how your silence gains an inner voice. That silence disarms because it no longer gives the manipulator what they expect, a reaction. And when reactivity dies, something rare is born, emotional discipline. The person who used to provoke you just to see you explode now gets frustrated by your serenity. And that, surprisingly, hurts more than any fight. It shows that you've evolved, that you've stopped begging for attention and started choosing what truly deserves your energy. That's personal development, not just a pretty phrase. But here's the detail few notice. True silence isn't absence, it becomes presence. A presence that echoes, that fills the emotional space of the other person silently and continuously. It leaves traces, questions, discomfort. And then things shift. Now it's you living in their mind, even without being physically there. That's Stoicism applied to emotional life, a conscious decision to stop reacting and start observing. But the most fascinating part is still coming. When your absence begins to take up too much space, it stops being just a void and starts being noticed as a new kind of presence. A presence that, even without speaking, screams. And next, you'll understand how this emotional looping becomes the new way you exist in the other person's life, even after you're gone. When you disappear, something strange begins to happen. Your absence starts to scream through every corner of the other person's mind. It's like every space where your voice, your reaction, your presence used to be, is now filled with doubt, assumptions, and regret. Silence becomes an emotional ghost, present everywhere, even when you're gone. And the longer you stay quiet, the more the other person hears what you didn't say. That, my friend, is emotional looping, your absence becoming an inescapable presence. Stoic philosophy always taught that perception shapes reality, and here, the other person's perception becomes a prison. Where they once ignored your words, now they're haunted by the ones you didn't speak. Where they once treated you like you were disposable, now they replay every last conversation, trying to decipher what you felt, what you thought. This loop is cruel, not because you wanted it, but because they created it through their own actions. Now, all that remains is the echo of what you chose not to say. Imagine someone who used to mock your sensitivity, laugh at your pain, now checking if you're online, scrolling through old chats, trying to figure out why you vanished. That's not magic, it's consequence. Absence isn't punishment, it's a mirror that reflects everything the other person refused to see when they had access to you. And that mirror doesn't lie. It shows what was neglected, what was taken for granted. And that hurts. It hurts because now, it's too late. This is where the power of a true life philosophy kicks in. Stop chasing and realize your peace has value. Your silence isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of self-love. While the other person is trapped in an emotional loop, trying to decode your silence, you've already risen above. It's like keeping calm under pressure while the world outside collapses, trying to understand your stillness. And the more you elevate yourself, the more the other realizes what they lost without you saying a word. This loop doesn't need words to be powerful. It's sustained by 3 Stoic principles: consistency, serenity, and discernment. You remain absent with strength. You resist the urge to send just one message. You don't check if they miss you. And strangely enough, that makes you more present than ever. Silence becomes an emotional tattoo, a memory that doesn't fade easily, a space no one else can quite fill the same way. And the most painful part is still ahead, because this emotional loop eventually forces the other person to confront a void that can't be filled with distractions, replacements, or pride. And at that point, when absence becomes a mirror, a very specific kind of pain surfaces. One many know but few overcome: rejection. And next, you'll see how that rejection can become the trigger for a silent, powerful transformation. Rejection leaves a bitter taste, but it also holds silent power for rebirth. When someone ignores you, takes you for granted, or simply doesn't value you, it's easy to feel like something's wrong with you. But over time and with wisdom, you begin to realize that rejection says more about the person doing the rejecting than the one being rejected. And in that moment of silence, you stop seeking explanations and start offering absence. Absence with purpose, absence with dignity. The key is in the choice. When you choose to walk away without shouting, without trying to prove your worth, without demanding emotional justice, you place yourself on a higher plane. It's not coldness, it's clarity. Like Seneca said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. You don't leave because you hate. You leave because you finally understand that your worth isn't up for negotiation with someone who never knew how to see it. And this silent exit? It hits harder than any dramatic breakup. Picture someone who always kept you uncertain. Should I stay or go? Do they love me or not? And then one day you just don't respond. No more texts, no more checking in, no more indirect posts. You simply disappear. That quiet, unexpected decision shatters the ego of someone who thought you'd always be there. And the worst part? They can't rewrite the story. They can't say you overreacted or acted on impulse. Because you didn't scream. You left in peace. This kind of absence doesn't let the other person play the victim. And that's what stings, because for the first time, they'll have to deal with guilt without a villain to blame. They'll have to face their own ghosts without the distraction of your pain. And worse, they'll have to admit, even if only to themselves, that they lost someone who truly loved them. Someone who is now quiet, who asks for nothing, who finally chose themselves. And that breaks even the most arrogant person. This is where Stoic philosophy shines. It teaches you how not to crumble, even when being ignored. You realize that self-improvement isn't about defeating the other. It's about mastering yourself. It's about leaving the loop of needing to prove anything. About breaking free from the urge to explain. When you choose silence, you begin rebuilding your identity from peace, not from pain. You stop seeing yourself as rejected and start seeing yourself as someone who finally chose their own worth. And while the other person drowns in that unanswered silence, something even more subtle begins to unfold. They start seeing your absence differently. They begin to wonder where you are, who you're with, what you're feeling. And that's where the everyday moments, the smallest, most ordinary scenes, begin to hurt. Coming up, you'll discover how simple visuals from daily life become powerful emotional triggers. And that's what leaves the deepest marks. You don't need a long speech to leave a lasting impact. Sometimes all it takes is one ordinary scene to spark an emotional avalanche. This video shows it clearly. Something as simple as someone checking if you're online, but too afraid to message, says everything. Or when your message is left on read. Before it was you who cared. Now it's the other person lost in thought, trying to decode your silence. Tiny gestures become mirrors, reflecting the absence that used to be ignored. These visuals strike the ego because they trigger projection. The person starts building narratives in their own mind. Are they with someone else? Did they really move on? And those unanswered questions become open wounds. The most fascinating part? All of it happens without you saying a single word. Your absence becomes a story inside their head. And that story, my friend, is written in fear, regret, and uncertainty. It's emotional looping taking on a visual form. Now picture this. You post something simple, a smile, a quote from a book on ancient wisdom. Nothing aimed, nothing provocative, just you, living. And even that feels like a message. Suddenly, every move you make becomes a painful reminder that they no longer have access to you. That's when absence becomes a suffocating presence. Because now, everything you do is analyzed in silence, and that hurts more than any argument ever could. These visual triggers are powerful because they can't be confronted. There's no counter-argument for what isn't said. Silence, mixed with these mental images, becomes fertile ground for pain. A pain the other person can't soothe because they no longer have access to you. That's what true emotional control looks like. You no longer need to prove anything. You just need to be. Be someone who no longer reacts, no longer explains, who now lives in peace with their own presence. Stoic philosophy teaches what is outside your control that should not control you. And in this case, what's outside the other person's control is your strategic absence. It's your decision to prioritize yourself, and it shows in the smallest things: your absence in a group chat, your silence on their birthday, your calmness in the face of chaos. Everything becomes a sign, everything becomes a question, and when everything is a question, everything becomes pain. But the deepest pain, the one that cuts the ego, is what we're about to explore. Because what truly breaks a person inside isn't longing or regret, it's lack of access. And when the ego realizes it lost control, collapse is just a matter of time. The ego can't stand losing control. It feeds on predictability, on the certainty that the other person is still there, available, accessible. But when you go silent and vanish without notice, you strip that control away. And what's left is desperation. The manipulator begins to quietly unravel, searching for signs, clues, any emotional crumbs to prove they still have a hold on you. But they don't. And that loss, invisible to others, is what hurts the most. Questions like, did they forget about me? Or did they replace me? Become internal obsessions. Silence becomes a riddle with no answer. And the ego, it needs answers. It needs to feel it still has power over your reactions. But when it can no longer measure your pain or predict your behavior, it loses the ground beneath its feet. It's like an addict being cut off from their emotional fix. The cycle breaks, anxiety rises, and the truth they avoided comes crashing in. You're no longer available. This doesn't mean you're winning a game, it means you finally understand how to stay calm under pressure. That now, you're not playing anymore. You're observing. You're prioritizing yourself. And when the other person sees that their provocations no longer affect you, the blow is deep. It's like they've lost access to you, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. That's when desperation kicks in, disguised as impulsive behavior, sudden messages, or proud silence hiding panic. Need a real-life example? Remember the person who used to coldly ignore your messages? Now they're the first to watch your stories. The one who called you too sensitive? Now they're asking, why did you disappear? Even if they don't say it, their actions reveal everything. Because the ego can feel it. It knows it lost something it once controlled. And that feeling is unbearable for someone who thrived on your emotional instability. Now they lose sleep, and you finally rest in peace. Stoic wisdom reminds us, it's not the loss that hurts, it's the attachment to control. When you break free from the need to react, you also force the other person to face a raw, unfiltered truth. They can't read your emotions anymore. They no longer know what you think. And the silence, once mistaken for weakness, now becomes the loudest declaration of emotional freedom you've ever made. And there's no undoing that, but something even more powerful is on the horizon. Because while they're trying to decode this new version of you, a quiet transformation begins to take root. You start building a new emotional identity, one that filters who enters and who no longer deserves access. And that new version of yourself, stronger, more selective, more serene, is what we'll explore next. While the other person sinks into doubt, something quiet but powerful begins to grow within you. A new identity is being born. You're no longer the person who explained everything, who wore yourself out trying to be understood, who cried after every rejection. Now you observe. Now you feel without losing yourself. Your silence becomes a filter. It separates those who deserve your presence from those who only deserved your absence. That's mental strength. That's real self-development. It's when you stop reacting and start choosing with wisdom. This new version of you is lighter, more selective, more calm. You no longer answer everything. You don't justify yourself all the time. You don't play emotional games. And the strangest part, it intimidates. Because those who knew your reactive side now face your stability. Those who used your emotions against you no longer find a way in. And suddenly, you become a new emotional territory. Solid, grounded, and inaccessible to anyone who didn't know how to value you before. Want a practical example? Before you felt guilty for saying no. Now you say no with peace and still recommend a good book on discipline, like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Before you felt bad for distancing yourself from people who drained you. Now you understand that's not selfishness, it's stress management. Every silent choice you make rebuilds you, brick by brick, choice by choice. And slowly, you become someone you didn't even recognize, but now admire. And what about the other person? They watch it all from a distance, trying to figure out where they lost you, wondering if there's still a way back. But there isn't, because you didn't give a warning. There was no farewell speech, no emotional closure, just a firm, mature, unshakable absence. And that changes everything, because the door they used to enter no longer exists. And what hurts isn't your leaving, it's that they no longer even get to knock. And this isn't about revenge, it's about transformation. Stoic philosophy teaches, don't heal to prove something. Heal so you never again accept what once broke you. Your silence is your shield. Your calm is your answer. And this new emotional identity doesn't need to shout to be seen. It speaks through the peace it transmits, through the respect it commands, through the energy it carries. And those who can't handle this version of you will simply be left outside. But the most impactful part is still ahead, because when silence comes from someone who once gave everything, it becomes irreversible. And it's that realization that you disappeared in peace without a scene, without return, that leaves the deepest scar. And next, you'll understand why this quiet departure can be the most unforgettable ending someone will ever experience. Some absences don't hurt, they transform. But others, when they happen in peace, without warning, without drama, without return, they leave a permanent mark. The pain doesn't come from an argument. It comes from the solid silence. From realizing that the person who always came back isn't coming back anymore. There was no final conversation, no last chance, no closure, just silence. And that silence says everything. It says, I've changed. It says, now it's me choosing me. And the other person, they feel it. It's as if the world shifted. This is the moment the ego takes its hardest hit, because even the coldest ones believed you still belonged to them. That one message would bring you back. That they could disappear for days and return like nothing happened. But now that door is gone. The absence became a wall, a boundary not built from anger, but from maturity. And paradoxically, that's what hurts most, realizing you didn't leave to punish them, you left to heal. Want a clear example? The person who thought they had you wrapped around their finger now avoids your social media, because just seeing you fine without them already stings, already burns. Because the peace you carry now, it screams, it exposes the change. And for someone still living in emotional chaos, watching you in balance is a mirror too painful to look at. A mirror that says, I lost someone who gave me everything, and now I don't even have access. And this kind of impacting doesn't fade. It repeats itself. In every failed attempt to reconnect, in every unsent message, in every birthday missed. The other person relives the absence as a constant reminder that the opportunity has passed, that you didn't leave on impulse, you left with intention, that your new identity no longer accepts crumbs, that the life philosophy you practice now has no room for those who don't know how to value it. And the most powerful part of it all is, you didn't need to make a scene. You didn't need to prove anything. You simply disappeared with dignity. You did exactly what the Stoics taught. Chose silence as your shield, calm as your sword, and peace as your answer. And that, my friend, is worth more than any angry reply. Because when you disappear in peace, you become unforgettable. Not for your presence, but for your absence. Now tell me, how many times have you tried to be heard when what you really needed was to be respected? How many times did you scream on the inside, but no one noticed? Today you've understood that silence speaks too, that disappearing in peace can be the loudest message someone has ever sent. Not to hurt, but to protect yourself. And that's the real power. Healing in silence, and letting the other person learn from the echo of your absence. But none of this works if you don't make a decision right now. Are you going to keep responding to everything? Keep explaining yourself to people who don't understand you? Or are you finally going to build emotional armor, develop mental strength, and stop giving your energy to those who don't know its worth? The choice is yours. Silence can be escape or rebirth. It all depends on who you want to become from here on out. And if this content woke something up in you, taught you something, or made you reflect, comment down below. My silence is my strength, so I know you stayed until the end. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that red button now. Turn on the bell so you don't miss out on more videos like this. To learn, to grow, and to become emotionally unshakable. The journey is just beginning, and you won't want to walk it alone.